Welcome to The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And we discuss the real news, what is really happening on this planet and even beyond this planet. What do you need to know in order to be informed right now? We have a newscast that comes out through our website, and it comes out 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And what this podcast is this is basically a review, a week in review of the stories, some of the top stories that we've covered. So if you need to play catch up because you had a really busy week, or if you want to share UNN with other people that you care about, this podcast is a great way you can do that. Most of our content, as soon as it's released, it goes up on our app, and you do need to have a subscription in order to access it. But after the information is out there for about a week, we do release the newscasts on YouTube and Rumble in their full form. So you can always get our content. It's just a matter of, are you willing to wait a little bit longer? Or maybe you listen to this podcast. Whatever you do is fine with us. We just want you guys to have the information so you know what's going on. And in this podcast, we highlight, like I said, some of the top stories. We talk about local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers, which are everyday people like you that want to make a difference on this planet. And we're just trying to get to know each other again. So show us what's going on in your community. Maybe some of the stories are a little bit more quote unquote newsworthy. Maybe you just want to show us a community event or something that you learned or whatever it is, but let's get to know each other again. We also have what we call New Earth stories, and these are stories meant to inspire you guys as to where our planet is going, where humanity is going, because we do have a bright and beautiful future regardless of what mainstream and alternative media have to say. We talk about regional stories that are impacting the people, and then finally we have our World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian, and that stuff's going to blow your mind. We talk about things happening on this planet with the deep state and other key players. At least they want to be key players. Really, they're just kind of playing with toys right now that they have no idea what they're doing. But we do want you to be informed about that, as well as things that could impact our planet long-term, cleanup of our planet. We are here for restoration. That's what we're all about. And we have access to all this information because we have the highest security clearance on the planet. People we work with. Kim has the highest security clearance on the planet. And so we have access to meetings. We know what's going on. A lot of these people, the information is so compartmentalized. So you'll have people that think they are doing good, but at the top level, they're all kind of on the same team. And if the people at the bottom knew what was going on at the top, they would have nothing to do with it, right? So we hope to raise as much awareness about this as possible because there are really good people on this planet. You just hear about the bad stuff, right? That's how they control us. That's how they keep us in a state of fear and uncertainty and not wanting to make a difference because you feel like you can't make a difference, but nothing could be further from the truth. So we are here to give you that message and let you know what's really going on so you can be the difference, the change that you want to see in the world. It's up to us. If you're just waiting for someone or something to come save you, you're going to be waiting a really long time. So with any information we give you, we encourage you guys to think critically, to ask questions, and always do your own research. So let's talk about what's coming up in today's episode. We have field messenger reports, and this week we had stories coming out of Greece, Spain, Romania, Canada. We had a couple from the U.S., one in Utah and in North Carolina. In the New Earth, we are talking about how to remove the darkness on this planet by accessing Theta. Theta is a state, it's a brainwave. And going into Theta allows you, it really opens up your ability to manifest and co-create with the creator of the universe. And so if we want to remove darkness from this planet, accessing Theta and knowing how to do that's really important. So we have a little bit of a teaser that I'm going to tell you about and how you can go through an entire Theta session and do this. Even if you wanted to do it on a daily basis, you could. So we'll get more into that. We're going to talk about leadership changes in the workforce and things that we can expect to see. And also when it comes to our pets, because I know a lot of people that watch our news, you guys are big into your pets, and that's amazing. I've got, a golden doodle that sits by my side most of the time when I'm doing work and when I'm recording. So we talk with a holistic veterinarian about following the BEAM. We're going to talk about what BEAM stands for and how it can help you and your pet have the most healthy and happy experience. And then in our regional news, we have, I picked some stories that I really hope are going to inspire you guys. So we're talking about Nigeria, and they had a bill that the people actually came against that was about dissent. And the bill is no longer going to move forward. So this, just kind of goes with power to the people and how you can take something and make sure that it doesn't happen without being violent. We've got a couple of stories that really play into that. We're also going to talk about student debt here in the U.S. And did the relief of some student debt really make a difference? We're going to talk about things that are happening in Kenya with Uber fares and how basically different ride-sharing apps are not being fair to those people, how they're taking matters into their own hands. There was a really groundbreaking report that was released, and I know our audience already knows about the dangers of fluoride, but the U.S. government actually put out a report that was talking about the dangers of fluoride and the impact it can have on our kids. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about mental health and some ways some hospitals are getting more creative and bringing creativity into their floors in order to assist with mental health. In our World Situation Report, we're going to talk about another unsuspecting player that has now entered Game of Thrones, what I like to call Game of Thrones, because it feels like any person with an interest in dominating the planet is stepping up to the plate right now. We're also going to talk about a news story and dive a little bit deeper into it. It's about FEMA and how they basically said that they're bankrupt. And what does that actually mean? If they're bankrupt, what does this mean for the fall of governments? And how does this impact the people? Because we've been talking about that for months. And then finally, we're going to talk about the deep state and how they were trying to use humans as to be able to open portals to other dimensions and realities. The problem is they are scraping the bottom of the barrel now with deep state people that actually know what they're doing, and they're messing up right and left. I actually have some personal experience with them messing with me that I'm going to share. So let's go ahead and get to it, guys. This is the rundown. Today is August 24th, 2024. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Let's kick things off with our lovely field messenger reports. Again, guys, these reports come from everyday people. These are people that watch our newscast, that just want to make a difference in the world. And you don't have to have any kind of training in order to become a field messenger. You just have to want to share what's happening in your community. And we all have these little phones. Sometimes, I guess some of us have bigger phones than others. And you have the ability to be able to record what's going on. You can record a little voiceover if you want. Send us your information and we'll put the story together for you. You don't have to have a production background. We've got a great team of producers and editors that put this information together, and then we share it with our audience. We try to share it with the entire world. That's the whole idea. We would love to have hundreds of thousands of field messengers. So if you're interested in that, there's more information on our website. But let me briefly go through some of the stories that we covered this week. So on Monday, we had a report from Vahagan out of Greece. He's actually from LA, but he was on what he calls his dream vacation. He actually went with his mom and he showed us some stunning video from Greece. And the landscapes are beautiful. Obviously, Greece has a rich history, a vibrant culture. So if you've ever thought about visiting Greece, if you want to learn more about that place, I highly encourage you guys to check out Hagen's report. Also on Monday, Emma from Spain shares with us a festival that happened in her area. It's called Fiesta Sonora del Carmen. And this is a festival honoring the protector of fishermen. Hey, I'm all for, if you want to celebrate and have a good time, I am all for you doing it, in any responsible way you can. If you want to celebrate the protector of fishermen, fantastic. Everybody loves fish, right? This is a celebration of music, dance, and other family-friendly activities. So you can check out her report and all the cool things that went on during that time. On Wednesday, we have two reports. Monica from Romania shares with us this project from Romania. It's called Garden of Paradise. And what it is, the intention behind it is to raise awareness about deforestation. And what they do is they transform a forest into an artistic display of tree painting. So have you ever walked around and noticed like X's on trees? Like sometimes they're red X's, white X's, whatever. That usually signifies that someone's going to come cut down a tree. Well, in Romania, they have lost more than 10,000 square meters of forest due to deforestation. And so this whole project is to raise awareness about this because trees are extremely important. We've talked about trees a lot. I mean, there's a lot of scientific information out there about, of course, they give us oxygen. We, can eat from various trees and, the fruit and things like that. But trees also have a lot to do with our history. If you've ever studied the roots of trees and how they connect with other trees, we can talk to trees. That may be a little far out there for some of you, but for those of us who literally hug trees, that is a very real thing. And so we don't want people just cutting down these trees. In Romania, 30 volunteers painted the bottoms in these beautiful bright colors. They painted 600 trees. This was eco-friendly paint. It does not damage the bark of the tree. In fact, it keeps pests away for up to 6 years, and it also attracts birds. And so, again, this is a land project to raise awareness about deforestation. It's beautiful. Be sure to check it out. Also on Wednesday, Annette from Canada shares with us this area. It's actually in British Columbia, where visitors and locals can paint rocks. Have you ever done that? I've done that with my kids before. You can paint rocks and add it to this beautiful little trail that connects Canada from sea to sea. And she shows us the rock she painted as well as some of the others, and it's just kind of a fun little project. On Friday, we had two stories out of the United States. Danelle, who was reporting out of Utah. Oh, this was a fun one, guys. I almost wish I was there. So Danelle goes to an alpaca farm, and it's not a huge farm. In fact, I believe it's called Jenny's Alpaca Farm. And we get to hear from Jenny. She's got a small business. She offers people the ability, and she doesn't have a huge space, so, just a handful of people, the ability to come on her farm, and you can do some weaving with these large farm looms, and you do it outside with these gorgeous, they're just the cutest little things. These alpacas are literally walking in between these looms. And I don't know if it was the way that Jenny cut the alpacas, like, their fur. They don't call it fur. Do they call it fur? Their wool, or you know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to say fur. The way that it was cut was so cute because it was kind of like really tight to the body up until the head. And then the head is like super poofy. Just the cutest little alpacas. And then they were drinking lemonade on a summer day. I'm like, this just sounds like heaven to me. So if you want to see adorable alpacas, check out Danelle's story. And then also Beatrice, who was reporting out of North Carolina. She takes us to a farmer's market. It's called Glad Heart Market. And, you see some stuff that you would normally see at a farmer's market. There's locally produced organic foods. She interviews some of the vendors that are there, and you get to know them a little bit and their passion for what they're doing. I believe she said the market is known for specifically their organic goat's milk. So you can do obviously various things with goat's milk, but that's kind of what it's known for. And, there's just a certain feeling that you have at farmers markets. My family and I actually went to a pretty big market in our area this morning. And I was just kind of walking through, noticing the different vendors. And there's just a different sense, like a different feeling when you go to farmers markets. People have a different view of life, usually. They're trying to get produce that's natural and organic, or, they're trying to buy from small businesses. And it's just a different feeling. And it's a beautiful feeling. So if you haven't had a chance to go to a farmer's market recently, find one in your area and support your local community. All right, let's talk about some stories out of our New Earth segment. It's one of my favorite segments on the news because it really explores where we're going. Where is humanity going? Where is our planet going? And these are bright, beautiful stories of encouragement, and just really reminding you of how powerful you are. It usually starts with an interview, and then we have some stories. So let's start with the interviews that we did. Starting with Monday, we had Michelle Ann Phillips on the news, and she is a Theta healing practitioner. Now, we've been doing this with Michelle for a while, and we've done a couple of segments where she wanted to take us through an actual healing or a practice. Well, these segments are usually about 5 or 7 minutes long, and so we can't do an entire practice on the news, but we've been showing kind of a teaser for it. And then on the app, we put the full length version. And we did the same thing this week. So Michelle and I are talking about, and we're going through a session for removing the darkness here on our planet. And I know that sounds like a really big thing, but really it starts from within you. And like I said, you guys are super powerful. And a lot of people think, geez, what am I going to do? How can I help make this place, a better planet? How can I help my family? How can I just help the whole world become a little bit brighter? So we take you through an entire Theta session, specifically focused on removing the darkness. And I will put the link to that session because it's a direct link. You have to have that link. I will put it in the notes for this episode. If you have that link, you don't need to be a member or anything like that with UNN. You don't have to purchase anything. I would just encourage you guys, take about 30 minutes and do this. And it's not necessarily a one and done. You can keep doing it. You can make it part of your regular day. But again, it's just one thing that we can do to help with the restoration of our planet. So again, I'll put that link down below. Be sure to check that out. On Wednesday, we chatted with Karen Sherwood. She is a business and career consultant here to help awaken the human spirit. And she gives us some tips on leadership changes that are coming our way. So for those of you who work in more of a, traditional way, maybe you are part of a business, a corporation, something like that. According to Karen, control from the top down in these businesses is going away. We are now focused more on leaders who are not just giving out orders, but they are empowering and supporting their employees in a collaborative environment. And I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight, but these are the changes that we're starting to see because this is more empowering. And we're starting to realize that if people do feel empowered, if they do feel excited because they can contribute more and they're not just taking orders, that they do better at their jobs, right? So it's a win-win situation. We're already starting to see these changes in leadership, and Karen tells us a little bit more about some of the changes she is seeing in working with these various businesses. And then on Friday, we have Dr. Jeff Feynman on the news. He is a holistic veterinarian, and I love talking with Dr. Jeff. He is such a gentle soul. And we're always talking about ways we can understand our pets better because, They're just super important to us, right? And Dr. Jeff says we need to follow the beam when it comes to making sure our pets are healthy and happy. And BEAM, I'll give you a little teaser here. BEAM stands for behavior, energy, appetite, and mood. So he tells us more about this and how if we were to track this, then we would truly know the state of our pet, because every pet is a little bit different, right? And I know sometimes, veterinarians, try to have like common, standards. Oh, well, if your pet does this, it's probably this. Pets are different, just like humans are different. But if you follow the beam, you'll know for your individual pet, since you're a pet parent, whether or not they're okay and if things can be improved. So we talked more about that. Okay, now let's talk about some inspirational stories that are happening around the world. In Tokyo, a group of Japanese seniors have embraced breakdancing. The visuals on this are fantastic, by the way, after it became an Olympic sport. The original idea was to encourage residents to be more active, but then some of the elderly residents started actually studying breakdancing, and they started training under the guidance of a national breakdance competition judge. Their enthusiasm led to the creation of a breakdance club for seniors. So in Japan, 30% of their population is older than 65. And what this does is this provides a way for seniors to stay fit, to socialize, and of course, to have fun. On the other side of the spectrum, so we just talked about senior citizens. Now let's talk about what one 14-year-old has done in Virginia. A student in Virginia has developed a groundbreaking soap to treat melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer. This achievement earned him the title of America's top young scientist in a national science contest. And he basically was inspired to create a low-cost solution to melanoma, since the recovery rate for melanoma is just 20% in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, that's compared to 99% in the United States. By combining simple compounds, he created a soap that reactivates and strengthens dendritic cells, which then help protect the skin from melanoma, which is the most common cancer here in the U.S. So whether you are on the older scale of things or the younger scale of things, like, don't write yourself off. Amazing things can happen, obviously. Now, back to talking about pets and animals. So the English town of Lewis has enlisted the help of dogs and their owners to a local reserve that was heavily degraded by foot traffic. And this is a project. So the project uses the natural tendency of dogs who, if you own a dog, they like to wander. They like to kind of go and feel things out. So they are counting on the fact that these dogs want to wander in the woods, and they spread these wildflower seeds from saddlebags that are strapped around the dog's belly. Obviously, they put that on them before they send them out, and it spreads these seeds everywhere. This random seed spreading is actually how, historically, many plants have evolved. It is key to maintaining a biodiverse and native landscape. So this story kind of comes full circle too, because they said it was a result of foot traffic that led to some of these issues. And now foot traffic, paw traffic is helping to fix the problem. In our regional news, there were a handful of stories that really caught my attention this week. I picked two from each newscast that, again, I hope these stories do encourage you guys. These are things that are happening, and you may have seen them here and there in the news, but it is kind of a guide as to where, nations are right now in the world, and different social issues and things that people are going through, economic issues. So some of these are really more inspirational, kind of like a new Earth story. And I am trying to pick more of those types of stories. I want to make sure the stories that we talk about on the news, that there is a positive spin to it on some level. And I'm much more cognizant of that, at least in the last couple weeks. And I hope to have more and more of these more positive stories on the news. But let's get to some of these because some of these are pretty feel good. For example, a proposed bill in Nigeria was aimed at curbing dissent, right? So if people want to rise up or whatever, wanted to curb that. Well, now that has been withdrawn after public backlash. The proposed legislation sought to impose severe penalties for acts they considered subversive. This could include lengthy prison sentences and fines for things like this: refusing to recite the national anthem or protesting without permission. Activists were concerned that these measures were oppressive and could be used to target government opponents. However, the government claims the bill was meant to enhance national security, which we know they love to say, hey, we're trying to make things more secure to take away your civil liberties. Next story. This has to do with student debt. So here in the U.S., we have had some, not all, but some loan forgiveness. So student debt loan forgiveness in the U.S. So there are borrowers now, who had student debt, who are experiencing some significant changes in their financial situations as a result. So there are individuals who were burdened by debt, and they are now hopeful that relief will qualify them for various things like mortgages or perhaps to support their own children's educational expenses. However, this study pointed out that some people who had their debt forgiven are now taking on new forms of debt, such as increased auto, credit card borrowing debt, those kinds of things. This study shows the impact on credit scores remains minimal, largely due to these new debts, counteracting the benefits of the forgiven loans. So some good news, some bad news with it. Now, back to an empowering story. Australia is taking significant steps to address workforce burnout and mental health issues, and they're doing this through legislation. It's called Right to Disconnect. The law aims to establish regulations requiring employers to respect employees' off-the-clock time. Research shows companies with these policies report improved well-being and job satisfaction levels, with more than 70% of workers viewing these regulations positively. But experts warn minor policy changes are not enough. Cultural shifts are necessary to prevent managers from contacting employees after hours. Researchers emphasize the importance of setting personal boundaries, recommending that employees turn off notifications and remove work emails from their phones. I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. In Kenya, taxi drivers in Kenya's capital are struggling due to a price war amongst ride-hailing companies. These are companies such as Uber, Bolt, and even some local startups. Many fares are dropping to unsustainable levels, and drivers are starting to set their own higher rates in Kenya. Some customers are agreeing to pay more than the app's suggested fare, despite Uber and probably other companies as well, despite their rules against doing these types of negotiations. Economic pressures in Kenya, including tax hikes and rising living costs, have prompted drivers to take action, which includes strikes over low commissions. An interesting report, as I alluded to earlier, has just come out in the U.S. This is a report from the U.S. National Toxicology Program, and it is raising concerns about the impact of fluoride levels on drinking water and how it's impacting children's cognitive development. The research shows higher fluoride exposure may be linked to lower IQ in children. 2 million people in the U.S. may still be exposed to these harmful levels. They say pregnant women and young children should be cautious. They should limit their fluoride intake, which includes drinking water and certain beverages. So you really need to check those labels. In England, The National Health Service, or NHS, is collaborating with a charity that's called Hospital Rooms to improve mental health units through creative art projects involving patients and staff. The charity has hired renowned artists to paint vibrant murals in their health units, which they believe creates a more therapeutic environment. And the charity has also launched a digital art school offering online classes taught by artists. Apparently, that became very important during the times of COVID. And this initiative aims to reach more than 180,000 patients with severe mental illness across 750 NHS sites. All right, let's talk about what was discussed in our World Situation Report this week. Of course, this is with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. She comes on the news and gives us an update. And on Monday and Wednesday, Kim and I were able to record together, which is awesome. On Friday, Kim was super busy. I have a statement from Friday, but let's start with some of the news that we talked about on Monday and Wednesday. So let's kind of do a follow-up from some of the news that we gave you last week. Last week was very interesting. We talked about archangels/angels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, and the fact that they made very poor choices last week. If you've been watching our news, you know that for, I believe, about 2 billion years, we were living in what is called a dark age. There's various names for it, but we're just going to call it a dark age. We have transitioned now, not to a light age, but to a golden age. And things happen very differently in a golden age. This is where your sovereignty is restored. This is the quote-unquote heaven on earth that the Bible and other historical texts and religious texts refer to. Now, I realize for some people, you may be looking around going, this does not feel like heaven on earth. That's because there's some people that didn't get the memo. But regardless of what the so-called deep state does, they will never be successful because we are now in this golden age. And this is what God's source, the creator, wanted to have happen. So it is happening with or without their help or their permission. So last week we told you about the angels who were trying to go for balance, but in doing so ended up siding with the deep state, giving them technology and things they should have never had access to. And they essentially had a choice to make. Are they going to come back to earth and clean up this mess they created? Or were they going to accept the consequence of going against God, source, the creator? And that was the destroyal of their soul. And that's what they ultimately decided to do. So all of that happened last week. And there have been some things that have happened as a result of these angels doing what they did. And I've said before on the news and talking with Kim, I'm like, when we learn about what the so-called deep state is doing, sometimes it just feels like an episode of Game of Thrones. It's like, who else is going to step up to the plate and try to run this planet? Because they all fail miserably, right? And we have more information that shows who some of these players are, right? We've talked about a lot of them in the past, but Kim got some shocking news about a new group. Well, not really a new group, but a group we just found out about who the angels were making promises to. So we've known about the Japanese. We've known about the Order of the Black Sun. But as it turns out, there was a third group of people, and it wasn't the Illuminati, and it wasn't the big bankers out there who were told by these angels that they were going to control the earth. And it's really shocking who this group is. Now, I want to preface something, and Kim prefaced this on the news too. When we talk about these groups of people, it's not necessarily the whole group of people. It's really their leaders. So when I say a group of people, I'm really talking about the leadership. And in this case, this new group of people that we just found out about that apparently have been promised things for a very long time are in the Amish community. Now, in the U.S., there are about 300,000 Amish. So we're really just talking about the leaders of this community, but their ties go really deep. They've worked with the deep state for a very long time, and a lot of them hail from Germany. So I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to play a soundbite because Kim was taken by surprise by this as well. We have not heard of the Amish leaders being involved in deep state activities. When you think Amish, you may think of really good furniture. They build houses really well, or, they don't use electricity. They don't vaccinate their kids. They don't watch TV. Now, some of this is making sense. It's like they almost knew that humanity was being controlled and they pulled their people away from it. But we didn't know that they were being promised the world on a platter. But why? Why the Amish? How does this fit into history? And who are the Amish people really? As it turns out, they are part of a group called the Aryans. But let's break this down because there's more than one group of Aryans. So take a listen and learn more about the heritage and the history of why this group has suddenly risen into the limelight.
Okay, so the original Aryans were from areas like Persia, Kazakhstan, in part of the Rus Empire at the time. You would also consider them in some ways Iranian. You could say that some of them were Indians, Greek, that type of region. Not all people from this region were Aryans. The Aryans had nothing to do with being white. It had to do with a group that was tied to the Abraxas. They were lower astral beings. Remember, as above, so is below. So if we have a normal organic human race in that region, they're going to create a non-organic human race for that region. To say that you could say that they would be related to the black nobility that we talk about often, the Italians. In the Silent Circle folks. That's why he's part Greek, the one that runs the Silent Circle. You could say that these people are the ones that would have operated on behalf of the Abraxas here on Earth, one of the owners of Earth. You could say that they don't represent the entire Iranian population as an example, but there's definitely an influence there, and they have been throughout history in the region leaders. You could relate them to the Gupta family out of India, which we know are on the board or were on the board of Goldman Sachs, very good friends with Bush Sr. and a lot of other folks we know that operate within the Black Sun. We know, fast forwarding in history, so now we have discussed that there's two different groups of Aryans we're dealing with. So Aryans were known as these people throughout history, a real history, before we ever heard of any other type. Now, all of a sudden, we have an introduction, which they have been around for a long time, of what we call the white Aryans. But they were introduced to us during World War II. Remember, Hitler wants to make a superior race, and everything is going to hail out of Germany and all of these things. But this has been going on, this fight for world domination has been going on a lot longer, because even some of these Germanic Aryans, as we're going to call them, also participated with one of their groups that were part of the Aryan side, the Germanic Aryans, called the Franks, in overthrowing and eventually taking control of the Holy Roman Empire. This is a part, in our history we don't talk about. So they've been working towards world domination for quite a long time. We also found a lot of connection between some of the higher Amish councils and a castle called, I think it's called Eltz, E-L-T-Z, in an area of Germany called the Palatinate region, probably not saying that with a proper German accent, but it's Palatinate, region of Germany. And there are often frequent visitors to Elt's castle, and the family that still owns that castle is also related to these people. How deep is this? I know. So we suspect part of the reason why the Germanic tribes ended up migrating over to America, because it was the New World at the time. You know, this was before our Declaration of Independence and all of this kind of stuff. You'll hear some of them being referred to as the Puritans or the pure race. I know.
I didn't know that's why they were called the Puritans.
The Puritans, they are the pure race.
Wow.
They do believe that they would like to control the entire world as well, at the highest level. That doesn't mean we're all going to go back to horse and buggy days or anything like that. See, now that's just for them, because they need to, quote unquote, remain pure. They breed amongst them their own families, you know, that not necessarily interbreeding, but they do breed amongst their own families. They're supposed to marry within their own group of families. And, you know, eventually over years and years of doing that, you know, they're essentially interbreeding. They have a lot of genetic abnormalities amongst the Amish, probably more than any other segregated group in the world at the moment. But they still have hope of creating the superior race of Aryans on this planet. Now, the council has made comments, and I've heard this, that they would like to run things from behind the scenes, as they always have. Meaning they have hired and taken the services as it suits them of a lot of the names we know, Medici's, Orsini's, the Order of the Dragon. There were deals made with the Rothschilds as it relates to the United States. They do have a lot of influence in politics behind the scenes. They have, matter of fact, the prophet Joseph that started the Mormon church is actually one of these members of the Germanic tribe and was an Amish. I know. You know, and like I said, you know, according to the Mormons, he's considered a prophet, you know, a prophet of God, that kind of thing. These folks, did, when they first arrived here many years ago, had superior skills to maybe not the version of humans that existed at that time, but they were pretty much on par with us. And I think in part at that time when the war was going on, the humans that were on Earth, these folks could blend in a lot of ways. This is the origin of some of the generals we see that used to fly around in planes that don't land and submarines that don't dock. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Now, the reason why I actually found this out is because the black nobility, or the other Aryans, apparently found out that these guys had gotten something from those three that departed as well, the Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. Yeah. And they wanted me to know, because they knew that I would take care of this issue, you know, make sure that it didn't happen, that kind of thing. But they don't always trust that I'm going to do what they think I'm going to do, because I don't always follow along with the grain of things and normal human behavior. So they sent over to them over the weekend a party or people from the Department of Defense with a terminal to which they could enter in their control and command codes, like the others did, which failed, and they attached that terminal to CENTCOM here in the United States, and they only brought the terminal like as a quote unquote gift, and you're our leader now. And, they lied and told them all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, they just hooked it up there so that they could steal all the codes that they input. Like, what codes did they get? Our codes didn't work. The black nobility codes didn't work. The military codes didn't work. The Japanese emperor codes didn't work. Well, maybe their codes will work. Maybe they just did like a shell game, and then they played all parts against the middle, and maybe they got the real ones only. How they do with the shell, if you don't never know if the ball is going to be underneath. Yeah. So they all felt like they were shells in the game. But, the other side wanted to win the game, so this is what they did. Their codes also didn't work. Nobody's codes actually worked. And they were told that they would work before the full moon, which at the time of this recording still hasn't happened just yet, the exact time. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, the folks that departed, God bless them the way they blessed us, did have a role in trying to do it like a time-released program where Omega would start regenerating itself, Kronos would start regenerating itself. They used their celestial powers for bad, essentially, against the orders of what Source wanted. They wanted to still go back to some kind of balance on this planet. And so they did have an intention of giving them all of this stuff, but without the authority to do so. So that being said, it kind of like would show up a little bit like almost holographic, kind of faded out, and then it would go away. And, and this was happening all weekend long. So now we have 3 parties as of today, still waiting at this moment, trying to figure out what's happening. Who, where's our, maybe we just need to wait a little longer. Can anybody reach these folks? Are they still here? What are we going to do? And none of them accepting the fact that they're not in charge.
Well, we can answer that, right? No, guys, the angels aren't coming back. When you go against Source, it never turns out in your favor. On Wednesday's news, we talked a little bit about some current events, some news stories, and she provided some background. She talked about an economic symposium going on in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And anytime you hear whether it's the World Economic Forum or it's, the G8, whatever conventions and things that they're putting on, the real meetings and negotiations take place at least a couple weeks before the puppets arrive. So the puppets meaning these so-called leaders of countries, presidents and prime ministers, and all the pomp and circumstance that goes on. That is just for us. That is the show. That is the movie. That's when the media come out. But the real negotiations happen about a couple weeks before. So you have this economic symposium going on right now in Wyoming, and the bankers are there, okay? And not that they really have humanity's best interest in mind, because they still want to, they're still banking, literally banking with the deep state. But they realize that, they used to get orders, they used to get money, none of that's happening anymore to carry out these nefarious plans. And so they did put out some feelers to Kim and her team about what it would look like to work with CARE. So Kim does explain this a little bit. She's pretty much talking directly to these bankers. And it is interesting for us to be clued in on what that could look like. I'm not going to play a soundbite, but if you want to, again, this was Wednesday's news. Go back and listen to the first part of the World Situation Report, and you can hear this conversation. Kim also talked about a report that came out with FEMA saying that they are bankrupt. So FEMA here in the U.S. stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency. They are supposed to be the people that come in our times of need when there are natural disasters. Now, they show up, but they rarely do anything besides take some pictures, hand out some bottles of water, and call it a day. They are not very helpful, but the interesting thing about this headline is that there is this announcement now that they are bankrupt, and they are really starting to prioritize, just the big things that they need to focus on, which I don't know if you're not going to go save someone from wildfires, quote unquote, or tornadoes or whatever. I don't know what their big stuff is, because they're certainly not helping the people. But there was this article that came out and said that they are bankrupt. So I'm going to play a soundbite, because what's important, sometimes you have to read between the lines with this. What does it mean when FEMA says they are bankrupt? We have been talking for a very long time now about the very real possibility of governments collapsing. We are trying to work with governments, but seems like all they want to do is steal our money, spread disease, and reach out to demons. That's pretty much what they're all about. So if you're not for all of that, then you're on Team Humanity. And that's the team to be on, because they are getting nowhere fast, and it's going to lead to their ultimate demise. And this article with FEMA is starting to bring some of that to light. So if FEMA doesn't have any money, you can see they're starting to prioritize their various programs because they can't pay for it. So what does this mean for us as humanity? Here's Kim.
There's an article in Forbes magazine where FEMA has announced that they're basically bankrupt. That's the emergency management services here in the U.S. Well, that's what they're supposed to be anyway.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. So the concerning part about this is, number one, for over a decade now on the internet, maybe even longer, there have been rumors about putting all of American citizens in FEMA camps. If you've been around in the alt media long enough, you've heard the story. Here we go. There is even paperwork that I have had cross my desk where, for example, the governor of Tennessee authorized the building of these FEMA camps. And yes, of course, right? Big black sun territory there, by the way. As you know, if you travel into the South, they were the last states, if they still have, and I question that, as to whether or not the if you're not white, you're not right rule still doesn't exist in some way, shape, or form. But them announcing that they're going bankrupt is a positive in some ways and a negative in others, because what it tells me is, number one, FEMA is an NGO. Even though they say it's a federal agency, it's technically not. It is a wholly owned NGO of the Rothschild family. That's number one. Number two, I'm not entirely concerned about people that are in natural disaster prone areas not receiving services from FEMA, because they really haven't provided any services in a while. They get on TV, they make some movies, they shake hands with the then president, whoever it is, and then they leave, basically. But this is a shout out to all of you that have that are involved with church groups, or you're involved with any kind of community services oriented organizations, to be aware that they may not be showing up. And which, if you've ever been in service during a time of a hurricane or something, you're probably happy about that, because all they do is get in the way and try to steal all the contracts. But if you are involved, you may want to do some preparation if you're in one of these areas, like, for example, the Florida area, Georgia. We're coming upon hurricane season now. So you may want to fill your contact list with, for example, companies that do disaster management, disaster cleanup. Prepare yourself to do emergency fundraisers if need be to help support your communities. Be prepared with extra services like that. The larger scale contracts is where you're going to see an empty hole. Large amounts of generators, these types of things. It wouldn't hurt to have some of these emergency items within your area and within your groups. See if you can find them on a discount, buy them used, whatever you've got to do to make sure that you can take care of your communities should there be a natural disaster. So this is important. The second reason why this is concerning and something to be aware of, as governments fail, it appears, and this is an indicator to me, that the first thing that is going to go is, how do I say this? The first thing that they seem to want to let go of is human services.
Of course,
and
yeah.
Yeah, and what I mean by that is think of everything that not your state, because we do have state-funded things like your police department, fire departments, those kind of things. And a lot of that's paid for by your VAT tax, hotel taxes, toll booths, road taxes, those types of things. But on a federal level, think of all the services that the government provides. We need to be concerned about that because that's probably what they're going to let go of first. Mm-hmm. So maybe keep that in the back of your mind. Now, for those of you that are on, like, for example, Social Security, disability, if you're not in the United States and you have national health services, these are things to take into consideration. Now, one thing, and it's someone I had talked to a couple of years ago, during the pandemic. One thing, if you are in a state or a nation that has national health services, to consider is a lot of people, nurses, doctors, and otherwise, lost their jobs or chose not to accept jabs, and therefore are employed in other lines of work because they are still requiring said jabs. So a thing to consider would be maybe possibly trying to formulate some kind of a network there amongst these service workers that used to work for National Health Services, and possibly let's go back to the old days for a little while where we're doing home house calls, writing prescriptions right there at home.
Yeah, we ran a story on that. Was that Monday? We ran a story about that becoming more and more popular. And people being more open to the possibility of home health care. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we used to do doctor's visits at home for a long time. This is not a new thing, but it's a thing that's kind of gone by the wayside and people tend to wait in long lines. Obviously, surgeries and those types of things are not a home. They're not going to set up a surgical tent in your home. But I mean, it's definitely possible because the military does it. So they set up those things in 20 minutes or less and perform emergency surgeries all over the world. So it's not like that is even an impossibility, in the future. But they are things to consider as we go forward, because I know it doesn't seem like that big of a deal with FEMA basically saying they're bankrupt and that they're only going to be able to provide minimal services from here on out. But that goes to show you what the government is going to cut first.
How do you think this is going to impact schools, Kim? Any idea?
Well, the education departments are predominantly in the U.S., they're state by state. I can't speak for every country, even on a university level. So you're probably going to see less of an impact there. We've already seen quite a bit of impact in the public school systems as well. But to some degree, every state does get a budget from the federal government, and that kind of supports their education, which is why they adopt things like Common Core math and things that make no sense, So it could impact positively and negatively in some ways, where your local communities, I know right now here in the States, you provide as a parent a lot of school supplies at the beginning of every year, which is something we didn't do until probably the last 20 years. This is new, fairly new, I guess you would say, here in the States. So if this doesn't happen in your area, these are things you might want to consider. You might want to consider getting all the parents together and everybody buying pencils or whatever it is, is needed in the classroom so that your child can still receive a good education. Because I know, private schooling is very expensive. and most people can't afford it. Online schooling is always an option too. But, for parents that both have to work, who's going to do the homeschooling? Who's going to be there? These are all difficult decisions to make. But getting together, maybe starting a homeschooling community group where, maybe each parent takes one day a week, or, maybe you have the school run between Wednesday and Sunday or something like that versus other days of the week where other parents can participate. So there's a lot of options, and you can get very creative when it comes to the education of your children. But as far as the public school systems, plural, because this would be every country, it is something to consider. Now, programming for the tyrannical order, as far as what they teach us in schools, which I call programming a lot of times, can be beneficial to them. Therefore, possibly it's not going to be as much of a consideration when you are looking at cutting off funding.
So the reason we bring up these stories is not to scare you, because we know that fear is the lowest vibration. It is very intentional that they try to spread fear in every article, every news story that's put out there. So we don't want to do that. This is about information that can help you make decisions now so that whatever comes our way, you're going to be fine. We have talked in the past about being able to replace different services that the government, may be providing at this time that may be going under, but we're also going to need the help of the people. So it's important now, whether we're talking about health services or we're talking about school, start to think about those things that you rely on and what some alternatives might be, because it may take us as humanity, as a society, coming together and supporting one another through a little bit of a rocky time. Funding is there. Money is there. So, that's what the deep state is looking for. It's on the side of the light. It's on the side of the golden age, and that's why they can't get it. So don't worry about money. Money is energy, essentially. So if you have a plan in place, if you have taken steps to make something happen, money is a great tool to make that happen faster and bigger and better. But it doesn't give you the idea. So we're trying to give you information now so that you guys can really think about this, because there may be some things that either we have to handle on a state level or even a local or community level, and we want you to be prepared. So no fear. This should be about empowering you to take back ownership of your life, ownership that they took away, that we allowed them to have, quite frankly, because we didn't know any better. But now we do. The third soundbite that I want to run, this is also from Wednesday's news, and this is really interesting. So it does still tie into deep state stuff, but this gets more etheric because we're talking about portals. You may have heard online or in different resources before that the deep state has used humans in the past to try and open portals. That's a very real thing. What's happening now is that you have got these deep state people, because all of their superiors have been eliminated and taken out of the picture and gone from the face of this earth and other planets and all levels of existence, so they can't get them back. They don't have connection with their demons anymore. These people, we are scraping the bottom of the barrel of people that had any esoteric knowledge, okay? And it's like they're kids trying to play with this equipment that they don't understand. And that was never more apparent than this week. And this is the soundbite that I want to play, because these deep state people were trying to use humans again to open portals, but they were doing it so poorly. And I have firsthand experience with this. I will tell it in this soundbite when Kim and I are recording, because they intercepted I don't know if it was a mission. It was certainly an experience, an out-of-body experience that I was happening during sleep time. But this wasn't a dream. I was astro traveling, and they actually intercepted my experience and tried to hijack it. So I know this stuff is real because I experience it firsthand. Take a listen.
So we are aware that there were many portals on this planet. We were aware that there were many energy overlays on our veins of gold on this planet, many things in our atmosphere, or in our orbit that would also drain energy from Earth to open up portals. And by portals, I don't necessarily mean, just to the lower astral. Since Earth is a gateway planet and a keystone planet, it could open up portals to other dimensions, other densities for travel. You travel down, travel up, travel side to side through timelines, those types of things. Now, humans, in this case, that are on Earth, were also used to power these portals. At one point in time, you existed 10,368,000 times. And
no wonder we're so tired.
No wonder why you're so tired. You're running your life in so many different ways,
I know.
Those things are things that are going away. But it's important to understand what happened here, what's been happening. So based on the amount of space junk and using certain alignments with source and those types of things, Earth is getting fairly well clean as far as their ability to use the energy of Earth to power their travel between timelines, between densities, between lower astral, upper astral, all these different places. So the most recent situation that has been happening, and I'm going to say it's been off and on since November of last year, but it's really gotten strong in the last couple of months, is when they do try to open a portal to another location. This goes for the Q gateways and everything they're expecting to open. They actually, in part, come through you. So it's not a direct, like, 0 point Earth. It opens the gateway and then they come up through Auschwitz or, some of the other portals on Earth, Silverton, Colorado, or in China, or in the Middle East, in Turkey or Lebanon, which they've tried. They now actually are using, or were, because the technology doesn't exist anymore, using technology to pull the life force out of you to open the portal on the other side, and then whatever they're trying to bring in here, in part, will come almost through your solar plexus on an etherical level, and then transmute itself into matter, which then becomes additional space junk on this planet, which they think is going to help them. I know.
I'm trying to wrap my head around all this.
I know.
I've also had some really weird dreams that weren't dreams, right? Like, you were somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out if this plays into that too. I had a couple of really weird moments last night that I can recall, but one was specifically, I felt like I had this deep state general in my ear. Like, I could hear him, like if you had, like a headset on and you were talking back and forth with someone, although I wasn't actually talking to him, but I could hear him giving instructions.
Yeah.
And I started messing with him. He got so mad because I don't know if he knew it was me but I was messing with the connection somehow. He was like, effing F. I mean, it was like cussing up a storm, but I somehow interfered with something that he was trying to do. I'm trying to figure out if that's like related to what you're talking about.
Well, and remember, they count on the fact that you're not aware because you're supposed to be sleeping at this time.
Yeah.
Now, here's another little interesting factor about sleeping during, since now they're trying to use us. And remember, this version of the deep state, what we have left, is not really adept at doing this. So it's not a shock. Well, it's not a shock to me that they were shocked to find out you knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And remember, certain people are just prime batteries, so they head for those people first.
Yeah.
Especially ones that are known to travel on their own.
Right.
So, not last night for me, but it was the night before last.
Okay.
Is when it was nuts, just absolutely insane. But an interesting little tidbit with this new SourceGate, thing we have now, is sleeping. Let's talk about sleeping. So they use your sleep time or nighttime. I mean, for two reasons. Number one, they use nighttime because in the past, it would be more. Dark portals would be more available because, they're always looking for something in the dark, of course. But also because as a human, when you're now being used not only as a battery, but also as a Stargate portal, you are using less energy. It requires less life force for you to exist during these times.
Okay.
Now, you are also more susceptible to, how do I say this? Thinking it was all a dream. This isn't really happening. Wow, I just had the weirdest dream that I had, General whatever, trying to drag me down a hole to this other world, or contact an alien race through myself. And this is weird, So the shocking factor for them, for you, Sunny, was probably that they're like, oh my God, she knows. She's listening to this whole conversation. Disconnect.
Yeah. And I was doing other astral travel last night. So I don't know if that was like honing in on me, but I had some crazy places I was last night.
Yeah.
It was like part of my whole experience last night was this deep state general in my ear. He was so mad at me.
Well, now, okay, I'll touch base on the sleeping thing because this is something you might find rather interesting as well. So when you're laying in your sleep with your solar plexus, obviously we know where the solar plexus is, and you're laying flat on your back. Your solar plexus is in alignment with the earth.
Okay.
No matter where you are, and in alignment with 0 point earth, and then therefore in alignment with source, in alignment with the veins of gold. So as hard as it is for some of us to sleep on our back, that's the reason why people tend to fall asleep in this position. They feel calmer in this position. When you are meditating, people like this position. This is mainly as of late.
Okay.
And of course, connecting to the earth or sleeping on the earth would even be like more ideal. There's nothing in the way. Not to say everybody needs to go sleep outside, but just giving you kind of a clue. But here's the interesting part. Because your solar plexus, especially over the last 2 or 3 days, because the deep state obviously is messing this up, as you now know, a lot of us do travel in our sleep. We have that ability. Or during meditation, we have that ability to travel to other worlds, to talk to other people. Some of us do, some of us don't at the moment, because that's not always going to be the case. And the ones who do light up for them like a Christmas tree. So you were going out and about doing your thing wherever you were going. And then they're like, get her, follow her. She's opening the portals, because that's what you're doing. You're opening a portal to another world in which you're walking right into. And that could be a world that exists in this reality or one that didn't exist in this reality.
I don't think it was not this reality. That's not where I was.
Yeah.
There were clones everywhere. It was a crazy mess where I was.
Well, you could have been walking into a future timeline that they were trying to implement. And that's why you all of a sudden started hearing this guy talking. And you're like, what is this?
It was so weird.
Because they were trying to get you to open that reality for the whole world, probably, where there was nothing but their little AI clones on this planet. And they'd be more than happy to have that happen or bring those things back with you. But when you're sleeping on your side, with the technology that they were using, it actually would open up portals to neutral timelines and dark timelines. because your solar plexus is perpendicular to the earth. Therefore, it's subject to some kind of subject to an outside influence.
Isn't that incredible? I never knew the position you could have been sleeping in could have had that big of an impact. Based on this technology, again, that they have no idea what they're doing and they are messing up royally. So the good news is even that technology has been taken away from them. Kim took it away. So for those of you that are now like, I'm only going to sleep on my back. I mean, that might be the best thing for you. Who knows? But don't feel like you can't sleep on your side because some deep state general is going to talk to you in your ear. I did not have that happen again. It was just that night. I don't recall that ever happening to me before, but it was right in alignment with the information that Kim had to give for that day. I love it when that happens. Okay, so on Friday, Kim was not able to join us live on the news. She had a statement that she had for me to read that just gives us a really brief update on what was going on. You know, she tries to be on the news as much as possible, but if things are happening in live time, and of course, they know when she's recording and they tend to try to mess with stuff while she's recording. So sometimes she just can't make it to the news. So I'm going to read this statement. I don't have any additional information. I just want to read it for you, and you guys have all the information that I have up until this point. So here's what I read on the news on Friday. Kim is unable to join us today as the deep state appears to have launched a full-on attack on the financial system. Hacking continues on secure information, such as credit card data and social security numbers, as the operatives try to revive the old financial slavery systems. As of this moment, which is Friday, they have been unsuccessful. Leverage attempts by the Treasury and Federal Reserve have fallen flat. There has also been a widespread effort to open portals leading to other human-computer networks on other timelines. Kim will give us a full briefing on Monday. And now you are caught up. We'll see what happens on Monday, right? So what should you do now? We've given you guys a lot of information. I know some of this can initially be concerning. You don't want to think about people interrupting your dreams and, messing with you at sleep when you're supposedly unconscious. But we do this to empower you. And I want to end this on a positive note. I want to reinforce the fact and just really understand that you are the light. If you're listening to this, you found this because that's who you are. And you will naturally, and this will happen more and more, but you will naturally be drawn to things that are of the light, that are empowering, that are encouraging, that are about moving us forward in this golden age. So I know that they're still trying to hang on. This is the longest death scene in history for the deep state, but please understand, you are a powerful manifester. So if you're focusing on good, good is going to come your way. If you're focusing on bad and all the crap that the deep state is trying to do, then more of that is going to come your way. So for me, I want to live in the highest vibration possibly. I want to be the light. I want to be around people that exude that kind of energy. So I encourage you guys to do something today that lifts you up, that makes you feel good, that gives you that love frequency, that thankfulness frequency. Those are the two highest vibrations on our side, on the light side. Create the world that you want to live in today. It starts with you. Do not wait for some savior to come and rescue from this. It's you that you've been waiting for. And if you like today's episode, I encourage you to share this podcast with someone you care about. If you want more information about us, you can visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. That gives you on-demand access, if you become a member, to all of our UNN newscasts, our complete world situation reports, and some of our original series. You can also comment under the videos there. Kim and I like to hop on there whenever we can and clarify things. You can join United Chat, which is our online community. And you can also follow us on social media. If you want those links on our website in the bottom navigation, we've got direct links to all of our social media sites. Thank you so much for being with us today. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.